For a long time, depression was thought to be an exclusively human problem, something related to the complexity of our thoughts, our worries about the future, or our capacity to reflect on the meaning of life. Current science paints a very different, and far more disturbing, picture. Animals can also develop behaviors that are strikingly similar to human depression. Let's start with a well-documented case: elephants that have lost a calf or a close member of their herd. Researchers studying these animals in their natural habitat have observed behaviors such as isolation from the group, loss of appetite, slow and lethargic movements, and even what appears to be a mourning ritual, where the elephant remains beside the deceased's body for hours, repeatedly touching it with its trunk. These behaviors are not simply automatic reactions. They closely resemble what we would recognize in humans as symptoms of prolonged grief or depression. Another well-studied example is that of dogs. Many owners have noticed that their pets stop eating, become less active, or even seem sad after the death of another pet in the house, or after a drastic change such as moving or abandonment. This has a real biological basis. Dogs share similar brain structures with humans related to emotional processing, including the limbic system, and they also produce the same hormones related to stress and well-being, such as cortisol and serotonin. Now, one of the most cited experiments in this field, though also one of the most criticized for ethical reasons, is the one conducted with laboratory rats to study depression. It was shown that rats subjected to prolonged and uncontrollable stress exhibited resignation behaviors, ceasing to try to escape uncomfortable situations even when an escape route was available, a phenomenon known in psychology as learned helplessness. This same concept has been used for decades to understand certain patterns of human depression, where a person stops seeking solutions because they have learned, through repeated experiences, that their efforts do not change the outcome. But perhaps one of the most striking cases comes from animals that have lived in captivity for long periods, such as orcas and dolphins in marine parks. Researchers have documented repetitive and seemingly pointless behaviors, such as constantly swimming in circles, as well as prolonged periods of inactivity, loss of interest in their surroundings, and in some cases, self-harm. These patterns are extremely similar to those observed in humans experiencing severe depression, and many animal welfare experts consider them a direct response to the deprivation of natural stimulation, movement, and the social structure typical of their species. Non-human primates offer another quite compelling set of evidence. Researchers studying chimpanzees in the wild have documented episodes of what they describe as profound grief following the death of an infant or an important member of the group, including behaviors such as carrying the lifeless body for days, refusing to eat normally, and showing a marked reduction in usual social interactions. Similar behaviors have been observed in birds that form very strong pair bonds, such as swans or certain species of parrots, where the loss of a mate can cause noticeable physical and behavioral deterioration, in some cases documented to the point that the surviving bird almost completely stops eating. In the field of livestock and animal welfare, studies have also shown behaviors consistent with depressive states in farm animals subjected to isolation or chronic stress, such as pigs and cows, which exhibit lethargy, decreased appetite, and reduced social interaction. These findings have led some veterinarians in recent years to begin prescribing antidepressant medications, similar to those used in humans, to treat cases of anxiety and severe depression in pets. In many cases, the results have shown measurable improvements in the animal's behavior, further evidence that the neurochemical mechanisms behind these conditions are surprisingly similar across species. What makes all this evidence so interesting is that it suggests depression is not an exclusively human phenomenon related to complex thoughts about the future, but rather has much deeper and more ancient biological roots, shared by different species that have undergone similar evolutionary processes. Sadness, discouragement, and loss of motivation could be, at their core, biological mechanisms designed to conserve energy in times of loss or limited resources. This may have served an adaptive function at some point in evolutionary history, although today, in both animals and humans, it can become a problem when it persists for too long. This also has important implications for how we treat the animals that live with us and those we keep in captivity. Recognizing that a dog, an elephant, or a dolphin can experience something akin to depression is not simply attributing human emotions to them sentimentally. It is acknowledging a biological reality supported by scientific evidence, and this completely changes our responsibility toward their emotional, not just physical, well-being. One experiment particularly cited in the scientific community is the so-called mirror test, used to assess whether an animal is capable of self-recognition, an ability associated with more complex levels of self-awareness. Species that pass this test, such as elephants, dolphins, some primates, and magpies, also tend to be the same species where behaviors consistent with grief and prolonged depressive states have been most clearly documented. This suggests a possible link between a species' level of self-awareness and its capacity to experience complex emotional states similar to our own, although scientists are careful to point out that this relationship still requires much more research before being established as a definitive conclusion. So the next time you see your pet behaving differently after a major life change, or hear about an elephant's grieving behavior, remember that the line separating human emotions from those of other animals is much thinner than we've been led to believe for centuries. If you're interested in better understanding the mind, both human and animal, then I invite you to subscribe because this channel will continue to bring you the answers that science has been uncovering, one fascinating fact at a time.